So, what is heaven? Last week I shared C.S. Lewis's definition, which was a wonderful story called The Great Divorce. And in it he's talked about people in a so-called hell getting on buses every day, going up to heaven. They could stay as long as they want, but they don't really like it, so they just get back on the bus and go straight to hell. And that's really that consciousness shift that we need to make in our consciousness from a willingness to embrace what is so that we can create what will be. And a willingness to embrace change as it comes into our lives. And really the definition of heaven that's working this morning is change. I love it. Bring it on, bring it on, bring it on. Together? Change. I love it. Bring it on, bring it on, bring it on. And so what does that bring up in you? Well, change is inevitable, but growth is optional. Well, if you don't grow through your changes, then what happens? It's called resistance, and it's no fun. Just think about that. Ask yourself, when in your life did you have a hard time with change? But change is necessary because who are you? You're the universe waking up and looking around, becoming self-observant and self-reflective. You are the self-awareness of the universe. And this whole universe is, well, it started with nothing. And then it became this expansive fireball that grew and became all the stars and the planets and the galaxies and you and me. And that's where we are. And it's never repeated a single step. You are irreplaceable. You are unrepeatable. Your life is like that. You are the awakening of the universe. So you say to yourself, I'm part of something bigger. I'm empowered. In our meditation, we talked about the beingness of us and how that's where we find our true security, our only security. And that beingness of you is that self-reflective universe awakening through you. You say, who am I to think that I am that? You are that. Who are you not to think that? So if that's true, why doesn't it feel like that? Because of what we might call false beliefs, a shell of false beliefs which we're all pushing through in our lives. And I want you to do two things. I shared this a little earlier. The first thing is identify something in your life, a false belief or a false self-identification, something you were taught, something you believed about yourself, that you successfully overcame. And how did it feel when you moved past that shell, when you got out of the chrysalis and spread your butterfly wings after making them strong, pushing against it? So I'm going to first begin asking you, that's the first thing. The second thing is to identify one right now that you're pushing through. But let's start in the past. Because you got to build on your successes. And you've done this thing. You've done this thing over and over in your life. You're made of magnificent stuff. You're standing in your beingness right now. You are strong. You are capable. So what is it? Name something in your life that,
I'm weird, they won't like me.
I'm weird, they won't like me. Now, and you pushed against that. You pushed against that. That was a shell around you. And as you broke free, how did it feel and what resulted?
I'm weird, they want to be like me.
I'm weird, they want to be like me. Except for when they don't. And sometimes they won't. And you make peace with that. Because part of this is embracing in the now moment the conditions that are there in order to create new conditions. This is a paradox. But you've got to, I hate to say this, accept the diagnosis in order to create a new prognosis. Not to say doctors are always right in their diagnosis, but the present moment circumstances you're dealing with need to be embraced and accepted. You say, I don't want to accept it. Well, that's okay that you don't want to accept it, you don't like it, but you've got to let it be what it is in order to create something new. You've got to accept what's happening right now in order to create what will be, because then you're empowered. Then you're not fighting against reality. Then you're able to say, change, I love it. Bring it on, bring it on, bring it on. Together, change, I love it. Bring it on, bring it on, bring it on. Now, what else in your life? What other false? Let's take something religious. Something you were taught religiously that was a shell, and you move past it. You decide, I don't believe that anymore. They taught me that when I was little, or somebody. Somebody, anybody? Yeah?
Being psychic is, you shouldn't, the Christian church, the Catholic church doesn't believe in that.
Okay, so you can't be intuitive. You can't have personal experiences that are within you. Yeah, and so interesting. So I'm going to share something right now. We're all moving past that. There was a Catholic questionnaire. It was a poll of priests a few years ago, and they asked them, "What do you believe about life after death?" And the number one belief, and it was anonymous, so they couldn't get in trouble. Number one belief was universalism, that it's all good. When you die, something good happens. The second was reincarnation, and the third was the doctrine. Where did that come from? But it's not the Catholic Church, it's Protestants too. They asked Protestant ministers, are you as progressive as your congregation is? And 70% of them said they were more progressive than their congregations were. And 80% of them said they were more progressive than they let their congregations think they were. Now, why am I telling you this? Because we're all putting up a front. The truth is that my son was talking to me about this. The percentage of people who have had an unexplainable spiritual experience is somewhere around 65 to 70% of people. I mean, people, near-death experiences, it's pushing 20%. I'm saying this because there's an understanding that's innate to us all. You say, but the world around me, I don't like the way it looks. But you've got to be willing to move past the limitations that you even think you see. Now, how about your belief systems, your religious belief systems, even the ones you're holding right now? You know, I always think of belief systems, even the familiar ones, even the good ones, as a ladder that I use to climb to a higher consciousness. It's a very crude analogy. So I'm climbing this ladder. Now, my ladder is made out of aluminum, and it's a good ladder, but your ladder is made out of wood. Infidel! How dare you? And that attitude, it's not, oh gosh, it's the belief systems that we hold. Carl Jung once said that a religious belief system can be the very greatest detriment to spiritual growth. Why? Because it's a box that we put God into. A wonderful Catholic mystic named Miriam McGillis. She's a nun and an environmentalist. She's a wonderful person. And she was being interviewed by a reporter who, in the middle of the interview, said, you know, you haven't mentioned the word God much in this interview. Why is that? And she said, well, God is mysterious. God is a mystery. And sometimes I feel that when I give a word or a name to a mystery, I'm putting it in prison. I'm putting it in a box. We've got to move past the boxes. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't use the word God. But don't use it unconsciously. Don't use anything unconsciously. Realize that your belief systems are simply ladders that you use to move to someplace higher. And what do you do when you get up on the roof? You don't need the ladder anymore. Or you may want to get to another higher place. Use a different kind of ladder. I don't know. So, in your life, I want you to identify where in your life you successfully move past a limitation, a religious limitation. The idea that I'm a sinner and I'm going to be punished because of just living my life. And when you got free of that, how did it feel? Where did you go with that? Well, know right now that there's another limitation that you're holding on to. I want you to identify what it is. What is that within yourself? Some limitation? And know that it doesn't limit you anymore. I love the story. I've been reading a lot about World War II, and especially about Norway. And Norway was very interesting in World War II. They were one of the first countries that was taken over. And the people there heard that the people who were going to, that the occupying forces were going to take everyone who was mentally slow, was considered to be less than, and take them away to camps, and they heard bad things about what was going to happen to them. So these Norwegians were extremely resourceful, and they decided, we're going to take all these people in all of these homes, these schools where they were put away, and tell them, you've got to act like everybody else. And they put them in people's homes, and people adopted them and told them, don't let on that you're slow. Almost none of them were found out. But the weird thing was, at the end of World War II, almost 80% of them were mainstreamed. Because they had years of practicing. Because, now you think about this, that doesn't mean that they didn't still have to deal with these limitations, but they didn't let the limitations define them. And so, in your life, if you've got something you want to let go of, you can do it. You're made of tougher stuff. You're made of greater things. You are irreplaceable and unrepeatable. This universe has evolved to the place where it's become you. And you know what? It's not a function of your belief systems. As I think Emmett Fox said, that a direct experience of God shatters your limiting religious beliefs. And you know, I can't eat a meal for you and you get nourishment out of it. And I can't tell you about my personal experience and you really get the benefit from it. I can't do that for you. You have to find your own. And that is within you right now and right here. You say, but that seems so far away. So no, you've had these experiences in your life. You just didn't recognize them, or perhaps you've forgotten about them. And today we're remembering them. Today we're celebrating them. Celebrating the who that you are, that is growing and yearning and changing. Change is inevitable. And you're changing into what? Something greater. But what about the limitations of the world? The limitations of the world can even be used by you to help you to grow spiritually. My favorite story of this is a guy named Sidney Rittenberg, who was an atheist. He was raised in a secular Jewish atheist family in South Carolina, and then he was put in the army and he went to China, where he fell in love with Chairman Mao. Now, how many people remember this story I've told about Sidney Rittenberg? Not too many. Oh, hardly anybody. Well, I guess it's been a long time. Well, I found this week, I was going through some old papers, and I found my interview with him, which I had not seen since I've been here. And this guy was amazing because the Russians didn't like the fact that this American was in charge of all the communications for Chairman Mao and Communist China. And he was a true believer. So they double-crossed him and planted evidence, and the Chinese thought he was a spy for the Americans. And he was put in solitary confinement for 6 years, after which they let him out because they realized it wasn't true because they had a falling out with the Russians. And then a couple of years later, somebody else planted evidence, and he was in for 9 more years in solitary confinement. Now think about it. 15 years of not being able to speak to another human being. What would it do to you? What did it do to him? He didn't have any religious beliefs. He had no religious training. And he became, you might call, enlightened. Let me tell you the story about this. He said, they told me that they were going to torture me. And I said, well, maybe this will never be settled if they're really going to do what they say. But one thing's going to be settled right here in this room. And that is my own outlook. What I decide I'm going to do with my life, what's important, is going to be settled right here. So I used to doubt very strongly at times that it was possible to survive and keep your faculties when you can't talk to anybody else. Then I thought, well, what about those Catholic monks and friars? They go for long, long periods of total silence, but it's voluntary. My control of my own situation can also be voluntary. And the real thing is to not fall into a defensive position where you don't act on your own initiative. Now here's something that's challenging for people. By embracing what is, you can create what will be. By, as Martha Creek says, it's reality, honey. Make friends with it. By accepting what is. You say, but I don't like what is. You don't have to like it. You just have to accept it. Accept it. Make peace with it. Making peace with it empowers you to then make changes. And this is what happened to him. So I tried to assure a certain time every day of thinking quietly, letting all my thoughts drift away and thinking about not really what I was thinking about, but what was basic and underlying. I couldn't help to think to myself when I was in solitary, my God, why didn't I just sit quietly and do this before? You see, we got a universe which is made of, well, it doesn't matter what you call it. You can call it spirit, you can call it whatever. It's whatever it is. Let's call it nature. When it develops to a certain point, at least on this planet, it produces us, human beings. And we're part of this whole. You're not something separate and distinct from nature. You're a product and a part of it. And after thinking of all these different things, I had experiences which could match, I think, in terms of subjective feeling, everything that people call peak experiences or transformation. It's a real sense of exaltation where you're tingling from head to foot. You really feel that, God, I'm really out of it now. I'm really out of it and I'm totally into it. You feel that you experience the widest range of truth, and yet you also see the little details. But why is that? I think it's not because you're in a state of mindlessness, but just the contrary. You're in a level of human understanding that relieves all the pains and aches and little knots that you have in a state of tension and restraint. This whole thing just seems to slough off you, and you feel this release. Some people call it a mystical experience. but I call it a human experience. Now, what happened here? He had no religious belief system or training whatsoever, and he just used what he's dealing with in his life, made friends with it, embraced it, and then moved with it. What do you call what he was doing? Meditation. But he didn't know it was meditation. He just did it. And what resulted was the rising within his being of what was truly his. And it was a direct experience. It wasn't something he was taught. It wasn't something anybody else gave to him. Nobody put a label on it. He couldn't put a label on it. He said everything that you learn, which is true knowledge, has got to be tested and practiced by you. Sometimes we get knowledge from other people's experiences, but it's got to be a personal, intimate thing, like things we've learned from our own experiences. Now, he's 96 years old today. He lives out in Seattle. And after he came back to the United States, he had, with this enlightenment experience, he's worked for many decades as a liaison between governments with China and between, because they cleared him at the end and they told him he could leave or stay. And the second time around, he said he'd go. But the point I'm trying to share with you is that there's something innate in you. Where'd this come from? It came from that which was innate inside of him. It's his willingness to embrace change. Are you willing to embrace change? Where is that change in your life calling you? Look into your life, it'll tell you. There's a hard shell of a belief. It's not really a hard shell, it's a crumbling shell of a belief system. And you're letting it go. And during our meditation time, and at the end of this talk, we're going to be letting that go. We're going to be using the treatment to just kind of allow that to, as he said, slough off all the aches and pains, all the limitations. You are not limited. You are unlimited spirit. I am unlimited spirit. Together, I am unlimited spirit. But you know, churches are an interesting place. We've got the past, we've got the future. We sometimes like to keep stuck in a certain place. But I love the way that you embrace change here. I remember when I was a teenager, I went to a Youth of Unity rally and we went to a service in a church where everything had been the same for 30 years, same minister. And oh my gosh, it was just, And one of my friends who was a member of that church, a teenager, said, "What do you think?" And I said, "I think somebody needs to set off some firecrackers around here." He says, "Well, I'm sure Reverend Sorflatten appreciates that." And the guy standing there scowling at me. So I didn't know that was the minister. But you know, it's interesting though, the next minister showed up and I knew her, and you know, people didn't want to change. And my childhood minister retired there, got on her board, and told me the story about how she'd sit in the services and listen to people grumble. She sat behind these two women one Sunday, and one of them said, "If that woman talks about change and growth one more time, I'm going to scream." But you are embracing change. You're embracing growth. And you're embracing change and growth within your own beingness. You're not limited by these stories of your life. They're you. As we worked with these affirmations, you can detach from them. You can rise above them. You can say, this has nothing to do with me, and yet still embrace that they're there, that they've appeared, but they don't hold you back. Now, what about the world of affairs, the world of events, things that look like limitations in the world? Well, this guy, Sidney Rittenberg, he was dealing with things that were much tougher than any one of us will ever deal with. There have been times in history that have been far worse than the times we're in now. But souls continue to awaken. Souls continue to wake up. That self-reflective self-awareness of the universe waking up and looking, observing. And that is who you are. And you can let go of those limitations that have held you back. And I don't know what it is that you need to release, but I know it's there for you. And there may be something in your life that's calling you that seems unfair or unjust or inconvenient, that's bringing you to the point where you're going to break free, where you're going to break through this shell. My very first church, I've shared this story many times, that we had a fire, the Revenge of the Plastic Flowers, where they wouldn't let go of the old plastic flowers and somebody set fire to them, and we had a... But what happened was all the sacred cows in the church that nobody could touch all got changed because of that. Because... I won't make you say it. Change, I love it. Bring it on, bring it on, bring it on. And where in your life can you embrace change and allow it to be? Let it be, not fight it. If you stop fighting the present, then you can create the future. If you embrace the now, then You can move into the future. You can accept the diagnosis and yet create a new prognosis. You can move into the future in your life. So I'm being called into meditation a little early. So I'm going to work with this same affirmation that we worked with. It'll take just a time, but I want you to take that shell that you're letting go of, that false belief that you're releasing. Close your eyes and just take these words as your own. I detach from this. I rise above it. I take none of this personally. It has nothing to do with me. My beingness is my security. No one can take it away from me. I stand in my beingness. I will honor that part of myself. My beingness will stay centered. I am an intelligent being, and I can figure it out. I am responsible within myself. I am strong and capable. No one can take away me from me. And I remember those words from Paul, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Behold, I make all things new, and I'm willing to embrace something new. I'm willing to let go of my old view of God, traded it for a new one. I'm going directly to headquarters. And I'm letting myself experience life as it is. I am this unfolding universe, thinking about itself. I am irreplaceable and unrepeatable. My beingness is my security. And so it is. Amen. And now take a deep breath. And then let it out and move into this now moment. Lighten up your energy. Set aside anything you hold in your hands. Have an open hand, open heart, open mind. So let it all go. Lighten up your energy and let go of all personal control and move into this now moment. Lighten up in the now and let go of all personal control. Just let it all go. And become aware that there is something in you that seeks to grow bigger than whatever you call a problem or a limitation. It really has to do with false beliefs that you've been holding on to that seem to limit you. And if you can identify what that may be, I want you to take these words as your words of truth as I speak them. As you take one more deep breath and let go in the now. Know these truths for yourself. My beingness is my security, and no one can take it away from me. I stand in my beingness. I will honor that part of myself. My beingness will stay centered. I am an intelligent being and I can figure everything out. I am responsible within myself. I am strong and capable. No one can take away me from me. My beingness is my security. And now I want you to take something that you want to release. A false belief, a limiting behavior, something somebody taught you that you no longer wish to have, no longer serves you. And just say to your own, I am that I am presence, I detach from this. I rise above it. This has nothing to do with me. I take none of it personally. And as I rise above it, I feel a lightness of spirit and being. My beingness is my security. And feel yourself lightening up your energy and letting go into this now moment. And as we sit quietly, center yourself in your heart and your willingness to let this go. I lighten up in the now. I lighten my energy and I move in this now moment. I let go of all personal control and I move into my higher consciousness. I detach, let go, rise above. I am empowered beingness. And only in my beingness do I find my security. I stand in my beingness. And I say, thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. And so it is. Amen. So this morning we're going to do our offering right now. And our offering is, I give from my infinite beingness and I receive abundantly. Together? I give from my infinite beingness, and I receive abundantly. And silently. And again, aloud together. I give from my infinite beingness, and I receive abundantly. And so it is. Amen.